3 in 5 Americans believe we're in a recession. Yet at the same time, you're reading articles about how the economy is doing better than ever. But what if I told you that most Americans are right? And the recession is here, but it's only impacting a very specific group of people. During a recession, job losses always follow the same pattern. Labor-intensive industries like mining, manufacturing, and construction are among the first to fire workers. As the recession worsens and Americans spend less money at IHOP and Target, businesses like retail, air travel, and hospitality feel the pain. Eventually, this downturn reaches corporate and white-collar professionals. But this time, the opposite is happening. According to Bank of America, unemployment is rising the fastest for households that earn more than 6 figures. In the past 2 years, tech companies have laid off close to 500,000 workers, including giants once thought to be impenetrable: Google, Meta, and Amazon. Then there's Wall Street with major financial institutions, Goldman Sachs, Wells Fargo, and Morgan Stanley, who cut about 20,000 positions in just 2023 alone. As a result, the number of high-income households receiving unemployment benefits jumped 70% in July, which is 2 times more than low-income households, including those earning less than $50,000 a year. And for the lucky white-collar professionals who held on to their jobs, things aren't looking too great. Many companies like X, Hulu, and more are cutting employee benefits like parental leave and childcare to control costs. Even salaries are taking a hit. Wages for the top income brackets have been flat this year, with many people earning even less because of shrinking bonuses. And it doesn't seem like things will change anytime soon. According to Indeed, job opportunities for white-collar professionals aren't looking great. Job listings for tech roles are down by 55%, and for the banking industry, down 40%. Blue-collar workers, on the other hand, are experiencing a sort of golden age. Unlike white-collar jobs, construction companies, restaurants, hotels, and more are still hiring, becoming a major driver of employment growth. And these employers are doing way more than just hiring workers. After years of labor shortages in these industries, employers are offering more money to attract and retain workers. Target announced that it would pay new employees $24 an hour. Starbucks set a national minimum wage of $15. Then there's McDonald's, Dairy Queen, and Subway's who's offering signing bonuses to start working. As a result, many low-wage jobs are now considered middle wage. In economics, they call this wage compression. Basically, it's when pay raises increase faster for low-income earners than for high-income earners. According to the Fed, across the board, nominal earnings grew 7.7% for low-income earners, but only 3.6% for high-income earners. But this isn't the only weird thing that's happening. There's something that many believe is an even better indicator of how the rich and everyone else is doing. In economics, they call it median wealth per adult. Basically, it's a way to determine how the typical everyday American is doing. In 2022, the median wealth per adult rose to $107,740 from $14,460, meaning the everyday American is financially better off. The bottom 50% even saw their slice of national wealth get larger, while the 1% saw their wealth decline. But I just want to be clear. I don't want this to come across as if I'm trying to say the average American is not going through any financial hardships right now. That's far from the truth. The reality is the average American is shouldering a burden, unlike anything we've seen in decades. Housing affordability is at its worst on record, auto loan rates have soared, and everyday items have gotten more expensive. I recently chatted with a friend from high school who said he was exhausted. He works a blue-collar job, he recently got a raise, but it's still not enough. And I'll never forget how he described his life. He said, "Have you ever gotten through 2 weeks of overtime and you get your nice big paycheck and then your car breaks down? Or you finally get your bonus and your dog gets sick? That's what life constantly feels like, and I'm tired." With all that in mind, on the bright side, if we can call it that, because of the recent wage compression, wealth and income inequality in the US has improved just a bit. I know it's not much and many people are still struggling, but it is a small step in the right direction. Personally, what I found really helpful when I was trying to build up my savings was using a savings goal tracker. It really helped me see where my money was going and how close I was to achieving my goals. And I want to help you out by giving you my personal savings goal tracker for free, link down below. When it comes to money, you might think everyone is better off in a good economy. Businesses generate more profit, job opportunities flourish, and everyone becomes a bit wealthier. But what if I told you, for the rich, the opposite is true? Economist Jonathan Nitze and his colleagues know a thing or two about this. He looked at how money was distributed between the 1% and 99% in relation to employment growth. Basically, he wanted to see how much money the rich made when more people were employed or unemployed. Between 1930 and 1980, although employment growth increased from 0 to 2%, the rich saw a 10% decrease in their share of national income, meaning the more jobs people had, the less money the rich received. Over the next 30 years, employment growth dropped to 0%, and the rich saw their share of national income jump by 10%. So what's happening? In a good economy, businesses hire more employees and profits increase. But this also means companies need to share more of their profits with their workers. On the other hand, in a bad economy, businesses hire fewer people and reduce their staff headcount, which saves them a lot of money. Labor is typically the single biggest business expense. Although business profits do fall, the wealthy in charge will still reward themselves with a larger slice of the smaller pie. From 2019 to 2020, when roughly 9.6 million Americans lost their jobs, the wealth of the richest people grew at a rate never before seen in history. According to Oxfam, over the next 24 months, the world's wealthiest people made as much money as they had in the previous 23 years. That's probably why, historically, higher income families have consistently felt more confident than lower income families, regardless of the economy. But what's surprising is that recently, they admitted that they aren't feeling too good, and they're starting to crack. The luxury goods market has witnessed amazing growth over the past few decades, despite financial crises, a pandemic, geopolitical tensions, and inflation. It seemed like nothing could slow it down. According to Bain, the luxury goods market posted a record year in 2022, where sales of personal luxury goods hit $385 billion. This is pretty impressive considering how 2022 was the worst year for the stock market since the 2008 financial crisis. Despite this, the luxury sector momentum kept going into the first quarter of 2023, reaching a 9 to 11% growth year over year. The luxury goods industry was once thought to be insulated against economic downturns, but that's no longer the case. LVMH, the world's largest luxury goods conglomerate, which owns brands like LV, Dior, Fendi, and 57 others, reported a hit to its revenue. This news caused its stock to plummet to 2023 lows, even dragging the stock prices of other luxury goods companies like Burberry, Hermes, Kering, and more. You might be thinking, great, who needs a $3,800 chess set, a $185 paperclip, or $150 straws anyway? And while I might agree with you, luxury spending is essential to our overall economy. Not because luxury goods are valuable themselves, but because the demand for luxury goods create jobs in manufacturing, advertising, event planning, and more. Then there's also economic growth. As global GDP grows, luxury spending grows at a faster rate than the economy, since wealthy individuals spend significantly more on luxury goods once their basic needs are already met. Between 1997 and 2019, the core personal luxury goods market grew on average 6.3% per year, twice as fast as global GDP. This differential in growth rates compounds over time. Since 1996, the luxury sector has risen in value by 380%, while global GDP has risen by less than 200%. So where are all these wealthy people going? Walmart, which is actually bad news for the average American. In 2022, Walmart said there's now more rich people shopping there. The typical Walmart customer is a 55 to 64-year-old suburban white woman with an income of around $80,000. But in 2022, Walmart said 75% of their market share gains are from customers making over $100,000. The problem is, if more and more people with money shop at Walmart, they might be forced to increase their prices to keep up with the increased demand. Looking back, it's clear there was a pivotal moment that led to this flipped recession, a blueprint that laid the foundation for how the rich would eventually be impacted. It signaled two essential elements. First, there's the US government to think about. With so many people losing their jobs and cutting spending during the pandemic, the government needed a way to stop the economy from bleeding. In the coming months, the government decided to flush the country with cheap cash. They cut interest rates and encourage everyone to spend. A second house? Why not? Another car? Make it a Tesla. But it wasn't just you. Companies now had access to millions of dollars for cheap, meaning they could finally do what they've always wanted to do. In the tech world, they call this blitzscaling. Basically, it's when a company tries to take over a market as quickly as possible. And tried, they did. They took hundreds of millions from angels, VCs, and banks and aggressively invested it into the business. A new office in Wyoming, 500 new engineers, a new Magic Land production facility. The plan was to scale to a point where they were finally profitable. The problem was, they ran out of time. Soon the Fed raised rates and money was no longer cheap. Companies couldn't sustain the original growth projections and had to cut costs. Beyond Meat cut 19% of their staff, Twilio cut 5%, Flexport 20%. As a result, in the past 2 years, close to 500,000 tech workers lost their jobs. Next, there's what rich people do with their money to think about. Naturally, after the companies injected hundreds of millions of capital from their lenders and investors, their earnings increased, which led to their stock price to follow. When stocks go up, investors try to get in on the action. In 2021, almost $900 billion were invested in ETFs and other funds alone, which is more cash invested than the past 2 decades combined. But who was investing and what were they investing in? According to Gallup, 84% of Americans making over 6 figures own stock, compared to just 29% of Americans making under $40,000. Meaning, high-income earners are more likely to have a greater portion of their net worth invested than other people. Over the next 12 months, capital markets rose by $14 trillion. But there was one industry and just 25 companies that accounted for 40% of those gains: tech companies. As the saying goes, what goes up must come down. In 2022, the S&P 500 lost about 20% of its value, becoming the worst year for the stock market since the 2008 financial crisis. Even bonds, which are traditionally seen as the safest investment, lost 16% of its value, the biggest decline since 1999. As a result, many rich people, including the ultra-high net worth, felt the pain. Last year, 1.8 million Americans lost their millionaire status, and 17,260 Americans lost their ultra-high net worth status. But who cares if a bunch of rich people lose money? Why should we worry if they can't eat caviar for every single meal? That they need to fly business instead of first class, or they can't buy a Rolex every other month? The problem is, if this trend continues, it's going to get even worse for the average American. But first, if you want to easily save more money, then using a savings goal tracker and checklist is the most effective way to do that. And I'm giving away my personal tracker for free, link down below. We use the word economy to summarize what is literally billions of things. Billions of people making billions of decisions all connected to each other. Should I take guitar lessons, buy this slice of pineapple pizza, repair this leather shoe? Each decision you make has a downstream impact. If you buy a slice of pineapple pizza, you create demand for everything that's required to make it. Pineapple farms, dairy farms, flour mills, and more. It's currently a good moment for lower income earners. Wages are increasing and wealth inequality is falling. But the bad news is, the good times might be over soon. As income inequality in the US grew the past few decades, so has the wealthy's influence on the economy. According to economist David Tinsley, the top 40% of earners contribute to 60% of the spending in the economy, from basic needs like pineapple pizza, eggs, and housing, to more peripheral wants like luxury LV bags, Mr. Magic lamps, or this $1,800 trash bag. The problem is, if the wealthy cut their spending for a prolonged period of time, the everyday American will be in deep trouble. Economist Raj Chetty and his colleagues know a thing or two about this. Chetty analyzed the spending patterns of workers at the height of the pandemic in mid-2020. He then matched the patterns to specific zip codes. He discovered that while small businesses were affected by the pandemic, it was the ones in the richest neighborhoods that experienced the largest drop in revenue. Similarly, low-wage workers in the richest neighborhoods were the ones hit hardest by unemployment. The problem is, the economy and everyday Americans depend on the rich to spend money. If the wealthy don't feel good about their finances and start rolling back their spending, they could drag down the entire economy, ushering in a new era of uncertainty. But what if I told you that this recession should be the least of your worries? What most people don't realize is something terrible is going on with baby boomers. Everyone says baby boomers are the wealthiest generation, but they're becoming homeless at a rate not seen since the Great Depression. Click here to learn what's happening and how it impacts you.